Karen Pannell was born in Germany on February 10, 1964. She grew up in Georgia, USA, and was the youngest of 6 kids. Her father was in the military, so they moved around a lot. Karen graduated from Northside High in Warner Robins, Georgia. Then, she moved to Tampa, Florida, to work as a flight attendant and model. She worked for American Airlines. Her coworkers said she was the perfect flight attendant. Always positive, smiling, and greeting people warmly. Karen was also known as the glue that held her friends and family together. Her loved ones were her top priority. However, Karen didn't have much luck with romantic relationships. She often picked the wrong men, and many of her relationships were toxic and abusive. She was married before her murder. Karen was hopeful at the start, but they got divorced after 5 years. Around the time of her divorce, Karen received upsetting news. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. This was hard for her, but her family and friends supported her. Karen decided to live life to the fullest and not let MS slow her down. At the time of her murder, she was dating Timothy Parrotter. Tim was a car salesman. They met at the Volkswagen dealership where he worked. They quickly started talking and fell for each other. Karen was hopeful about this relationship. Tim seemed different from her past boyfriends and seemed like someone she could have a future with. Overall, Karen lived life to the fullest until her life was cut short. This case starts on October 11, 2003. Karen didn't show up for her shift at American Airlines. This was unusual for her because she took her job seriously and loved it. One of Karen's coworkers contacted Tim, Karen's boyfriend. They told him Karen hadn't come to work and asked if he had heard from her. Tim said he hadn't seen Karen since the night before but would go to her house to check on her. Tim arrived at Karen's house around 10:30 a.m. He went inside and found Karen dead on the kitchen floor. The scene was like something out of a horror movie. There was blood everywhere. On the walls, floor, and counters. There was also a clear sign of a struggle. Tim immediately ran outside and called 911. He was hysterical and told the operator he didn't know if Karen was alive because he was too scared to get close. First responders went to the scene right away. When the police arrived, they found Tim in the front yard, very upset. He was throwing up because he had gotten sick after seeing Karen's body. The police went inside and saw the horrific scene. Karen was on the floor, stabbed 16 times in her heart, neck, and chest. While some detectives searched the house for information and evidence, others took Tim to the police station to ask him questions. The police had Tim explain what happened before he found Karen's body. They wanted to know the last time Tim saw Karen. Tim told police that on Friday night, October 10th, he had gone to Karen's house to drop off a gift, a kitten calendar. He thought it was a cute gift that reminded him of her. He said he didn't stay long and left around 7:30 p.m. That was the last time he saw Karen alive. Tim said that nothing seemed unusual when he saw Karen. She was in good spirits. When police asked why he didn't stay the night, Tim explained that they never spent Friday nights together because Karen always had an early shift on Saturday mornings. That was their routine. Regarding the rest of his night on October 10th, Tim told police that after leaving Karen's house, he went back to his apartment and stayed there for a while. Then, around 9:30, he called a friend named George Solomon, who was also a coworker. They made plans to hang out later. Tim drove to George's house in the Moon Lake area of Florida, about an hour north of where Tim lived. He didn't get to George's house until around 10:30 or 10:45 p.m. The police confirmed this story with George. George said that he and his girlfriend spent time with Tim during the time Tim said he was there. George confirmed the story, and everything checked out. Tim was upset but cooperative when talking to the police. He also told them about his criminal past. Tim said he had been arrested for running an escort service when he was about 20 years old and spent about 10 years in prison. He was honest about it from the start. The police appreciated his honesty and cooperation. Tim didn't seem to have any physical injuries. Karen was stabbed 16 times, but Tim didn't have any cuts or scratches. The police had him take off his clothes and took photos of his hands and body, but nothing seemed suspicious. Back at Karen's house, the forensics team was doing a thorough investigation. They quickly figured out there was a struggle during the attack. Karen had defensive wounds all over her body, showing that she fought for her life. Several items were taken as evidence. On the kitchen counter there was a pizza box. Karen had ordered pizza on October 10th. The box had 3 slices missing. Outside the house, a bird bath had been knocked over. Also, the cable box had been opened, leading police to wonder if it was a robbery gone wrong. Karen's purse was found knocked over on the stove, as if someone had quickly tried to take something out of it. The police considered the robbery theory, but as they continued to search the scene, they noticed something that changed the direction of the case. A message written in blood on the wall. The letters ROC were written on the wall in blood. The letters were large and clearly intentional. The police looked at Karen's hands, specifically her index finger, to see if she could have written the message. They noticed her finger was stained with blood. The police wondered if Karen had left a message to help solve her own murder. This led to more questions and changed the investigation. The police tried to figure out what ROC could stand for. They didn't know if it was an acronym or a name. They quickly discovered that ROC was the name of Karen's ex-boyfriend, Rock Kopic. Karen and Rock had dated in the past, and friends said it was a toxic relationship. Rock worked at an auto body shop when he met Karen, soon after her divorce and MS diagnosis. Karen leaned on Rock, and he took her to doctor's appointments. She even asked Rock to move in with her, which he did. Karen's friends and family were worried because things were moving quickly, and Rock wasn't their first choice for Karen. Rock had a criminal history and a substance abuse problem. Karen often had unexplained marks and bruises during her relationship with him. Soon after they moved in, their relationship worsened. Rock broke down the front door one night after an argument. Karen filed a domestic battery complaint, and Rock moved out. However, things didn't get better for a while. Rock kept harassing Karen about a desk he had left at her house. He was determined to get it back and continuously called and texted her. Karen told her friends and Tim that this was Rock's way of trying to get back into her life. She cut off all communication with Rock. Now, Rock's name was written in blood on the wall, so the police were very suspicious and decided to visit him. The police told Rock that Karen had been murdered. Regarding his relationship with Karen, Rock said they were toxic for each other. They would get into screaming matches, and the police visited them often. Rock said that he and Karen were equally violent towards each other and claimed that Karen would throw furniture at him. Rock admitted that he called Karen multiple times for the desk, but she wouldn't let him have it. When the police told Rock that his name was written in blood on the wall, he knew he was a suspect. He was cooperative, waived his right to a lawyer, and gave his fingerprints and DNA. The police took pictures of him and didn't see any markings. He also had a confirmed alibi for the night of Karen's murder. This forced the police to continue their investigation. The forensics team carefully examined the wall with ROC written on it. They removed the piece of the wall and took it to the lab. They noticed that ROC was written over dried blood spatter. The blood spatter wasn't smeared, which meant that ROC was written after the blood had dried. At the forensics lab, investigators recreated the blood spatter with animal blood to see how long it would take to dry. They discovered it would take about 20 minutes for the blood to dry before the letters could be written on top without smearing. This meant that ROC wasn't written until at least 20 minutes after the blood spatter was on the wall. Investigators tried to find fingerprints on ROC to confirm who wrote it, but there were none. Instead, they found a polka dot-like pattern in the writing. The police remembered that there was a gardening glove on the kitchen table. Only one glove was found, and the other was missing. The palm side of the gardening gloves had rubber nubs for gripping. The police wondered if whoever wrote ROC was wearing the glove or used the pointer finger of the glove, which caused the rubber pattern in the writing. Along with these discoveries, the police also learned that Karen was left-handed. This was important because the blood on her finger was on her right hand. There was no blood on her left hand. This made it hard to believe that Karen wrote ROC because it wasn't her dominant hand. Also, the medical examiner said that due to the extent of Karen's injuries, she wouldn't have been able to write ROC on the wall after the attack. Her spinal cord was 90% damaged, so she wouldn't have been able to move, let alone 20 minutes after the attack. The medical examiner said it wasn't possible. These findings made the police confident that Karen didn't write ROC on the wall. This led the police to wonder who did. This discovery took Rock off the list of suspects for several reasons. Rock had an alibi, and knowing that Karen couldn't have written his name made it unlikely that Rock would write his own name on the wall. It didn't make sense for him to kill Karen and then write his name in blood. He was at home on the night of Karen's murder, about an hour and a half away, and cell phone records confirmed this, so Rock was cleared. But it showed the police that whoever did this was trying to frame Rock. This was someone who knew Rock and knew about the relationship between Karen and him. This narrowed down the suspect pool. It wasn't just anyone. It was someone who knew Rock and Karen's relationship. The police looked at all the men Karen had dated, but all were cleared. None of Karen's other ex-boyfriends were near Karen's house on the night of the murder, except for one, Tim. The police started to look more closely into Tim and Karen's relationship. They learned that Tim wasn't always truthful with Karen. When Tim and Karen first met, Karen was excited because she felt like she had met someone who was a good person. But the police learned that Tim had been lying about his past. He told Karen he had been a Navy SEAL involved in top-secret missions, which was why he had certain injuries and scars. Months into their relationship, Tim finally revealed that none of that was true. He had to tell Karen that he spent over a decade in prison for his escort business. Tim said that once Karen knew the truth about him, she became frightened of him. Karen told her friends and family that she was afraid of Tim. Friends and co-workers also suspected physical abuse in Tim and Karen's relationship. Her oldest brother claimed that Karen told him that Tim had choked her on one occasion. However, she never filed a police report. There were also times when Karen would wear turtlenecks in the middle of summer in Florida, leading others to suspect she was trying to cover up markings. It was clear that the good guy act Tim was trying to portray wasn't who he really was. Tim said he put on this act and lied to Karen because he thought she wouldn't like him otherwise. He was worried to tell her the truth in the beginning because he thought she wouldn't want to be with him. But he eventually had to come clean. At this point in the investigation, the police went back to the evidence they collected at the crime scene. There was Karen's purse, the gardening glove, and the pizza box with 3 slices missing. When scanning the pizza box for fingerprints, forensics found Karen's and Tim's fingerprints. This might not seem like a big deal because Tim said he went to Karen's house that night. But the timestamps were important. Tim told police he left Karen's house around 7:30 p.m. However, the pizza delivery receipt showed that the pizza wasn't delivered until 8:48 p.m. That's over an hour after Tim said he left. This created a big hole in Tim's alibi. The police also spoke with the pizza delivery driver, who said that when he dropped off the pizza, Karen answered the door and seemed happy. The delivery man said he and Karen exchanged a fun and flirty conversation. But he left because he saw a man in the background over Karen's shoulder. Karen knew the man was there, but it seemed like the man was a jealous and angry boyfriend. If that wasn't enough, the police also looked into Tim's phone records and saw that Tim called his friend George at 9:36 p.m., as he had said. But Tim told police he called George from his own apartment. Cell phone records showed that Tim was calling George from Karen's house at 9:36 p.m. The phone call he claimed to make from his apartment was actually made at Karen's house. With these new findings, the police brought Tim back to the station and had him explain his timeline of events again. He repeated his original story, but the police started to tear apart Tim's alibi. Tim said he had a simple explanation for these inconsistencies. He was simply confused and bad at remembering times and dates. But during the interrogation, the police said there was an obvious shift in Tim. Tim put his head in his hands and left them there for about 2 minutes. When he looked up, he looked like a completely different person. His eyes had gone dark, his face had dropped, and the detective described it as if Satan had walked into the room. During the interrogation, Tim didn't confess, but he said he knew he was going to be blamed for Karen's murder because he was the one who discovered her body. The police had enough evidence to arrest him. They believed that Tim killed Karen after she tried to end the relationship after learning the truth about him and his past. Tim was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Karen Pannell. The evidence against him was mostly circumstantial. There wasn't any physical evidence linking Tim to the murder, and the police didn't know where the murder weapon was. But the circumstantial evidence was strong and was about to get even stronger. For weeks before the trial, George Solomon, Tim's friend who Tim spent the night with on the night of Karen's murder, confessed to the police that Tim had told him that night that he had killed Karen. George was now saying that he saw Tim that night, and Tim told him he killed Karen. George said that when Tim called him that night, he confessed to killing Karen on the phone. The case took 4 years to get to trial. Tim pleaded not guilty. The defense argued that all the evidence against Tim was circumstantial and that he was just the easy person to blame. The defense also questioned George Solomon's story, saying that it didn't make sense for George to invite Tim over to his house with his girlfriend if Tim had just confessed to murder. It seemed odd to invite someone who just confessed to being a killer. The defense argued that there were no physical markings on Tim. The police searched his car and apartment and found no physical evidence. On the other hand, the prosecution brought George Solomon to testify, and he told a different story. George said that when Tim called him the night of October 10th at 9:30, he didn't immediately confess to the killing. He told George he wanted to talk to him about something in person. When George invited him over, Tim confessed to the murder. George said that Tim told him that leading up to the killing, Tim and Karen had gotten into an argument because Tim had recently quit his job at the car dealership. The argument escalated, and he used a knife to kill her. He even told George that he used Karen's finger to write her ex-boyfriend's name on the wall. Detectives also testified and talked about some of Karen's neighbors who said they saw Tim's car at Karen's house far beyond the 7:30 mark when Tim claimed he left. One neighbor even said they saw Tim's car in the driveway until 2 o'clock in the morning. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. They found Tim Parater guilty of first-degree murder. Tim has said that he's not surprised by the verdict. However, he has always said he wasn't the one who killed Karen and is hopeful that one day the truth will be revealed and he will be released from prison. And that, everyone, is the case of Karen Pannell.